So being a content creator, you have a lot of hurdles to overcome. You have tech problems to overcome, you have to learn how to talk to yourself, and you have to learn about cameras. That's right, I said it, you have to learn about cameras. Boy, is there a lot of them. So being someone that's kind of obsessed with cameras, since I've also spent probably way too much money into cameras, but to your benefit, I've done a lot of research, so I wanna try and give some basics at least of cameras and what it means to you, what are some important features and things like that when you're looking at cameras. So also too, I have a lot of people that ask me about cameras because they see all the stuff that I've done so far with photography and videography and all the research I've done. And to be kind of like Harris Heller, I'm just gonna create a YouTube video so that I can just link people to it. So here is a YouTube video of the camera basics for streamers. And if I link this to you, it's because I love you. And it's gonna be a really good video. So sit tight, relax, and let's get to it. Let's talk about the basics of cameras. I wanna talk about some of those key features or key words that you might hear with cameras that you probably don't understand. And I wanna try and break it down a little bit. This is gonna be very surface level stuff. I don't wanna go too deep, but I just wanna give you enough information to be dangerous and know when someone is talking about a camera recommending it, why they're recommending it. So first thing is first, we have a full frame sensor camera versus a crop sensor camera. Crop sensor cameras come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, such as the ASPC, Micro Four Thirds, and things like that. ASPC is probably what you see most, which is gonna be the Sony a6100, as well as the Canon M50 Mark II. What are the differences to you though? What does it mean to have a full frame sensor and a crop sensor? Well, generally, a full frame sensor is gonna be better in low light. It's also gonna have more range of glass that you can use with it, lenses. It's also gonna have the ability to get a little bit of a wider shot, more likely than not on most of the lenses. And lastly, the sensor size of each pixel is gonna be larger, which means it's more data that gets captured. Now I know that sounds like a lot, but trust me, it's really not that bad. What does it mean for streamers? And I mean, does a full frame sensor really matter compared to ASPC? Now, based on everything I just explained to you, you're probably thinking, oh, full frame's the way to go. It's gonna make a lot better quality camera. Well, yes and no. I would say for streaming, honestly, I would always recommend ASPC, and here's the reason why. First off, it's gonna be a lot more cost effective. Secondly, the amount of money that you would pay in difference between a crop sensor and a full frame camera, you're probably not gonna get the quality out of it when you're streaming, especially whenever it comes to compression and things like that. So unless you have a lot of money and spending thousands of dollars on a camera setup is really no big deal to you, or if you're much further down the road in your journey, or if you're trying to become a professional photographer, videographer, I wouldn't even worry about full frame, I just worry about ASPC. But that is the difference, essentially, in a nutshell. Now, second thing that you hear a lot with them is there's gonna be basically, it's like a trinity of settings. There is your ISO, your shutter speed, and your aperture. What the heck do they mean? What even are they? So ISO, what the heck is that? ISO essentially is adding brightness to the actual image. So in scenarios where you might not have enough lighting, you can also increase your ISO to give it more brightness to it. However, if you use that too much and not use your actual lighting the way that you should, you can actually add a lot of noise and issues to your image quality. But that's essentially what ISO is. Generally, for rule of thumb, I try and keep mine as low as possible and just add in regular lighting to help out. So shutter speed. What is shutter speed? Think of the shutter being your eyelids. It's kind of weird thinking of cameras having eyelids, but it's the easiest way to explain it. Now think of your eyes opening and closing so many times per second. I don't even know how many that was. You can just guess. But basically, it's gonna be the actual shutter opening and closing so many times per minute, per second, or whatever the heck it is. Honestly, the rule of thumb, just to kind of keep it easy, is you generally wanna shoot double your frame rate. However, whenever I stream, I do keep my Sony a6100 at 1/60 because I'm shooting at 60 frames per second. If you're recording YouTube videos like this, you wanna double your shutter speed for your frame rate. Now, f-stop and aperture. This is probably your favorite thing and you honestly didn't even know it. What f-stop and aperture really is basically how wide can this lens open up to let as much light into the sensor. Sounds kind of weird, but before I say anything else, just answer this to yourself. Do you like bokeh? Do you like blurry backgrounds? Look at that, look at the tree on the side, how the bokeh balls come out on that. Do you like that? Of course you do, you're a streamer, just like I am. That has essentially helped with aperture and f-stops. The lower it can go, the better depth of field it's gonna have on the subject in the foreground and the background. So that's where you get some of that as well. This also pertains to lenses and also cameras when it comes to settings. I'm gonna dive a little bit further into that a little bit later on, but that's essentially what aperture is. Think of it as being able to open up your eyes really, really wide to let more light into your eyes, or closing them to go ahead and shut out some of that light that's coming in. Easiest way to describe it. Next I want to talk about is going to be focal length. Focal length is basically pertaining to how zoomed in or how zoomed out you are. This is really going to be pertaining to lenses and basically the numbers that you see on here. That is going to be your focal length. So how zoomed in or how zoomed out you really are. Now let's go ahead and talk about probably the most popular lenses on the market, the Sigma 16mm 1.4 f-stop. A lot of keywords you might have just heard. So again, 16mm is going to be the focal length that it is at, and then the 1.4 is the f-stop, the aperture, how wide open that lens can get, aka how much light it lets into the sensor, aka how much light you don't have to worry about blasting on your face, such as my key light that I have right now that's really, really bright, that I probably don't want blasting on me for 8 hours a day if I was a full-time streamer. Now, a couple notes with this, because I do want to be very clear about this, because I will be talking about focal lengths later on in the video and stuff, is that if you're using an ASPC sensor, a cropped sensor, your focal length is gonna be cropped, which means on this camera, which is a full frame, a 28mm would look different than a 28mm on a crop sensor. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about that kind of stuff. Also too, the higher the number, the higher the millimeter, the more zoomed in the actual image is gonna be, the lower it's gonna be, the more wide it's gonna be. For instance, I'm filming this at 20mm right now. I could open this up to a 17, and this is what 17mm look like on a full frame camera. And then if I want to zoom in, this is what a 28mm looks like on a full frame camera. And then lastly, because it is important, is that different millimeters will have different distortions, which means, I think the easiest way to describe it is look at GoPros. It has the famous fisheye effect. Now, whenever you get really up close to yourself, it looks like you have a huge nose, or it might look like you're kind of like oddly shaped a little bit at times if you're too close to your face with it. And that's because it's distorting the way that you look. This distortion effect happens at all different focal lengths, so just keep that in mind. When you are looking for a camera for yourself, a lot of people generally go with a 16mm on a crop sensor, or something like a 20 to 24 on a full frame sensor, because it's gonna be a very wide shot. All right, hopefully I explained that all pretty well to you guys and I didn't lose anyone. If I did, comment section down below and I can try and reiterate what I was saying, or if I didn't explain enough, I'm sorry. But let's move on to the fun part. The second part of this is gonna be how to shop for a camera. That's right, I wanna teach you guys how to shop for a camera instead of being told what to buy. So there's gonna be a few things you wanna look for when you're buying a camera. Number one, does it have a clean HDMI out? What you really wanna do is you wanna take this image and you wanna display it as a webcam, whether it's gonna be with a capture card or not a capture card. Talk about that later. But you wanna make sure it actually displays a clean image. So for instance, when your camera's on, you see all these like weird little like numbers and things like that all over the screen and such. And to be completely honest, you wouldn't want that on your webcam, would you? You already have a little space on your webcam showing up, and you wanna make sure that you're showing up as clean and as clear as possible without very much clutter. So what that means is that when you have a clean HDMI out, it will actually display that image without any of that information reading on the screen. So power options. There are two different ways to power a camera for whenever you're actually gonna be using it as a webcam. Number one is gonna be a dummy battery, which is basically just a fake battery that has contacts that go inside of the camera and powers it through a regular AC adapter. And then secondly is gonna be through USB. Some cameras can do USB, some cameras can do a dummy battery. Just make sure that it does one or the other, because if you try and use a regular battery, you're probably gonna be able to get a couple of hours out of it and then have to switch your batteries out, which that's annoying. No one wants to do that. You ain't got time for that. Also, when you're shopping for it, you will see something that says body only and with a kit lens. What the heck does that mean? Well, when you're buying a camera, you can either buy just the body by itself, or you can also buy it with a lens. Now, generally, a lot of people, again, I've mentioned it before, a lot of people will go ahead and buy something like the Sony a6100 and then invest in the Sigma 16 1.4. So at that point, if your just plan is to do that right off the bat, don't worry about wasting a couple $100 to get a kit lens and save yourself some money to put it towards your Sigma. But if you decide that this is already a big investment for you, because it is a big investment, then go ahead and maybe just get the kit lens and kind of use that for the time being, and then invest in a better lens later on down the road. Either way is completely acceptable, but just understand that whenever you buy body only, you're gonna have to buy a lens for it. Now, how do you get your image from your camera to your computer? Well, cameras nowadays will offer two types of ways to do that. Either A, you can do it through an HDMI output, which will work with something like an Elgato capture card, and then the other way is to do it is through USB. Now, from what I've seen, you're more than likely gonna wanna get a capture card, because it's just A, gonna be able to produce a better image, it's gonna be cleaner, it's also gonna have less jitters. I've seen a couple of things like the ZV-1 or the ZV-E10, which is an ASPC crop sensor camera, try and use the USB output, and it's not nearly as clear as using a capture card. But keep in mind that if you do go with something like an A7C or an A7 IV, you might be able to just use it with the USB output, and it's gonna look pretty darn good. Also, a couple things to note, before going with a camera, make sure that whatever capture card you buy, it's gonna work for, such as Elgato. You can go right to their website and they will explain to you every single camera that works with their capture card, so you don't worry about buying a camera that doesn't work with the card. And then lastly too, make sure that again, it's got a clean video output because not every video output is the same. Now these last two things are kind of smaller, but some things I feel like that should be said is, does the camera have autofocus? What does that mean? It means I can go ahead and put my hand up and it's gonna focus on it. I can take it away and it's gonna focus right back on me. If you're like me, you like to unbox things and you like to show things off on stream, or you like to do Pokemon card openings and you like to go ahead and put the card right up to the screen. But if your camera doesn't offer you autofocus, you're gonna be constantly having to refocus your camera, which is super annoying. Now, some people, they don't do that. They just kind of sit in one spot or relatively one spot and they're not moving around too much, getting up and doing push-ups or sit-ups or whatever the heck you're doing on stream. But essentially, autofocus probably isn't that big of a deal to you, so that's just some small note to make sure that you're checking on before you buy a camera. A lot of the cameras can go anywhere from $500 to $600 to $700 to, if you're really looking to a full frame, you can end up spending thousands of dollars on this setup. So please make sure that it's gonna be within your budget, because to be completely honest, video isn't the most important thing about your stream, and I promise you, even people like XQC got away with using a regular webcam and still does to this day. So now, as someone that spent a lot of money on cameras, again, yes, they are awesome to have. They're really cool to get to learn and play with, and you can also make money by using these. But again, just don't go overboard. The last couple things I did want to leave you with is just my personal recommendations based on cameras I've used in the past and if I could recommend them to you or not. So for an ASPC or a crop sensor camera, the Sony a6100 is a fantastic camera. Still to this day, it produces an amazing quality image. It has a fantastic HDMI output. It's very clean. I absolutely love it. Honestly, I've used that for my stream for a very long time, and everyone that's seen my camera absolutely loves it and has zero problems with it. If you pair that with the Sigma 16 1.4, you're gonna be in a fantastic shape and have a great camera. Even if you do wanna do head-on talking stuff like this for YouTube, that camera is, I wanna say fantastic, but I feel like I've said that a million times. It's amazing. It's a great camera and I highly recommend it. You can get that setup for probably right around $1,000, maybe a little bit more. Keep in mind, you might need some other stuff, but camera-wise, it's a fantastic pick. Now, if you really decided that you do have the budget and you do want to just jump into a full frame camera, even though it's overkill for stream, then I'd still recommend the A7C or this A7 IV would be a fantastic camera. Either one of those are great cameras to invest in. They're beautiful cameras and they work really, really well. They have clean HDMI outputs. They both can actually be powered via USB, which is awesome. So it saves you on having to buy a dummy battery. Keep in mind, they're both still over $2,000 or right around $2,000, but they're great cameras and I absolutely love them. The video on these are fantastic and the photography you can get out of these are amazing. Now, two of the recommendations I can make that I haven't personally used, but I've heard of a lot of good things about is gonna be the Sony ZV-E10, which what I've heard is a really great camera. It might even be something that's comparable to the 6100, but it's got a flip out screen instead of a flip up screen, but it has a clean HDMI output and it looks fantastic. And it is an interchangeable lens system, just like the Sony 6100. And then the next recommendation is gonna be the Canon M50 Mark II. From what I've seen, that thing is absolutely beautiful, produces a great quality image, and you still have a beautiful, clean HDMI output on it. And you can still get dummy batteries for each one of them, so you don't have to worry about your battery being drained if you're trying to run off the battery. Just invest in a dummy battery because both of them will have the option for it. I do apologize for the length of this video. I know it's kind of a long one, but hopefully you guys really enjoyed the content and it actually made sense to you guys. Did I actually help you guys out with this? Did you guys learn more than you knew before? Do you guys now feel confident about buying a new camera? Go and let me know in the description below. Also, while you're there, feel free to go ahead and hit that like button and also subscribe to the YouTube channel. I really do appreciate it. But I'm hoping that this actually helps out. If not, then maybe I'll take a second crack at it and explain it a little bit better. Or like I said, if there are details that you guys want to learn more about, maybe I can try my hand at explaining it a little bit more in depth. But I wanted to be able to just explain to people what certain features are of a camera, what it means, what they do, and kind of give you a couple of different examples. So that way I can kind of show you guys and keep linking people to my YouTube channel because shameless plugs. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. If you guys have more questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Also, you can also visit me on Twitch Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday night at 8 p.m. EST for now. And I'll see y'all then. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. See you in the next one.